Welcome to This Explainer. You know, it's a hard truth to swallow, but well-meaning spiritual care, it can actually become incredibly dangerous if you don't have the absolute right guardrails in place. In fact, an untrained organization can accidentally make a crisis so much worse just by skipping over basic safety steps. So today, we are unpacking a really fascinating framework developed by Restoring Hope Ministries. We're going to crack open their internal guidelines to see exactly how they set these crucial boundaries to protect the vulnerable during ministry care. I mean, think about it. When an organization offers spiritual support, what is supposed to happen when a person's needs escalate from, say, a spiritual struggle to a literal life-threatening crisis? Let's find out.
So here is our roadmap for today. We are covering the journey from the counseling room straight up to the boardroom. We'll start with the boundaries of care, map out their specific 6-step crisis decision tree, nail down the exact triggers for escalation, explore how partner churches plug into this safely, and finish up with the board oversight that keeps the whole system accountable. Let's get right into it.
Section 1. The boundaries of care and how we go about protecting the vulnerable.
Okay, let's dive into the foundational problem this entire document is trying to solve. How exactly should a biblical counselor, or even just a church care team, respond when someone walks into a room and their needs suddenly involve severe trauma, abuse, or imminent harm? Because here's the thing, without a solid, predetermined system, people just default to their own best guesses. And in a crisis, best guesses can be incredibly dangerous.
Now, Restoring Hope Ministries lays down a really solid definition of scope here. They define biblical counseling as Christ-centered care for the soul, but, and this is a massive but, it maintains deep humility about its limits. It explicitly states that it is absolutely not a substitute for medical, psychiatric, emergency, legal, or licensed clinical care. They literally never try to spiritualize away a medical or legal emergency.
I absolutely love how they frame this internally. Their manual states, and I quote, "Risk awareness is not fear-based leadership. It is love of neighbor, truth-telling, protection of the vulnerable, and responsible care for the mission." So the crucial takeaway here is that putting risk protocols in place, filling out incident reports, involving law enforcement, none of that is about dry bureaucracy or some lack of faith. It's actually a profound, mission-driven act of loving your neighbor enough to actually keep them safe.
Moving right along to Section 2, the 6-step decision tree. This is how we map the crisis triage. Notice the incredibly strict hierarchy of triage here. Before a counselor ever gets to traditional spiritual care, they literally have to clear these top 3 hurdles. Step 1 is their imminent danger. We're talking active suicidal intent or psychosis. If yes, you activate emergency protocols immediately. Step 2 addresses any suspected abuse of a child or a vulnerable adult, which triggers strict mandated reporting to protective services. And Step 3 screens for domestic violence or coercion, mandating safety planning and specialized referrals over any kind of standard marriage counseling. You simply have to address the physical danger first, no exceptions.
And here we see the full 6-step cascade. So, if you clear the life-threatening emergencies in those first 3 steps, Step 4 then checks for complex clinical needs like severe trauma or addiction withdrawal. Step 5 rules out the need for qualified legal or financial advice. Only, and I mean only, when Steps 1 through 5 are cleared as no, do you finally reach Step 6, proceeding with standard biblical counseling. By following this exact funnel, caregivers are safely filtering downward from life-saving interventions straight to standard pastoral care.
Which brings us to Section 3, Emergency and Clinical Triggers. Basically, knowing exactly when you need to escalate.
This distinction is an absolute lifesaver. On one side, we have our emergency triggers, things like imminent suicide, homicidal risk, severe medical distress, or acute psychosis. These require an immediate 911 call or a mobile crisis unit, no hesitation. But on the other side, we have clinical triggers. This includes PTSD, severe depression, bipolar symptoms, or eating disorder medical risks. Now, these aren't necessarily an immediate 911 call, right? But they do dictate a direct mandatory referral to a licensed clinical counselor, psychologist, or psychiatrist. Because to be clear, you do not treat these with just a Bible study.
So what happens when any of these triggers are actually hit? Well, caregivers must immediately pivot to these exact actions. They activate emergency protocols, they notify their supervisors, and they follow all mandated reporting laws to the letter. Notice that 4th point, prioritize safety planning. Do not force conjoint counseling. Listen, if there is coercive control or domestic violence happening, putting a couple in the exact same room for counseling is incredibly, undeniably dangerous. And finally, the whole shebang. Every risk disclosure and every referral has to be completely documented.
All right, Section 4.
Let's zoom out a bit and look at partner church safety pathways and how this integrates with the wider community.
So how do local churches actually plug into this? Well, Restoring Hope Ministries builds relationships using these partnership tiers. A church provides annual financial support, starting down at the support tier for $250, all the way up to higher tiers. And in return, their congregation gains access to a certain number of subsidized counseling sessions. It is just a brilliantly practical way to share the care pathway, right? It ensures that financial barriers aren't blocking vulnerable church members from accessing the help they desperately need.
Now, to be crystal clear, this is definitely not just a financial transaction. The internal documents insist that partner churches absolutely must adhere to these safety guardrails. They have to honor client confidentiality and consent. But most importantly, look at that fourth point. They must never, ever use ministry counseling to bypass mandated reporting or legal interventions. A church simply cannot use this partnership to handle abuse allegations internally, just to protect their reputation. Protective action always comes first.
Basically, Restoring Hope Ministries serves as the ethical hub for this entire community integration. They are providing the clear consultation, the training, and the tracking pathways for church care teams who, let's be honest, might otherwise lack the professional expertise to triage these complex crises on their own. Finally, we reach Section 5, Board, Oversight, and Training. Let's talk governance and accountability.
This is where the rubber really meets the road over the calendar year. This board development calendar dictates specific, structured training expectations for all board members. In Quarter 1, they are focusing on finance and conflict of interest. Quarter 2, they dive deep into biblical ethics, the scope and referral limits we literally just talked about, plus abuse response. Quarter 3 looks at school oversight and founder succession planning, and it all wraps up with Quarter 4's annual assessments. It ensures continuous, systematic maturity at the governance level.
And this part right here is brilliant. This is exactly how they stop their board from just becoming a rubber stamp. The governance manual actually arms the board with these exact oversight questions to ask regularly. Things like, are our counselors actually trained on the decision tree? Are supervisors reviewing high-risk cases? Are our public-facing claims accurate, or are we overpromising? By forcing the board to ask these highly specific questions, they are actively monitoring and mitigating risks across the whole organization.
And this level of oversight trickles all the way down to their educational arm, the Restoring Hope School of Biblical Counseling. The board makes sure that students are formed with these exact disciplines. Before a student is ever allowed to sit across from a hurting client in a practicum, they have to complete an ethics clearance, thoroughly understand the boundaries of their care, and know exactly how to use that 6-step referral tree. No cutting corners.
So, I want to leave you with this provocative final thought. Looking at the incredibly rigorous structure Restoring Hope Ministries has put in place, from their 6-step decision trees all the way up to board-level risk management, it really challenges all of us. If you are part of a community organization, a church, or a care facility, are your guardrails strong enough? Do you have a concrete system that defaults to protecting the vulnerable in a crisis, or are you just sort of hoping for the best? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I really hope this deep dive gave you a powerful new perspective on what structured, ethical care truly looks like.